Where do all the top car dealers go? To get the best ideas to help more customers buy cars using the internet. It's the Internet Sales 20 Group, of course.
Everybody's selling cars on the internet. Everybody's selling cars on the internet. Everybody's selling cars on the internet.
So go to internetsales20group.com. That's internetsales20group.com. Because
everybody's selling cars on the internet. Why not you?
Hey everybody, this is Sean V Bradley, president of Dealer Synergy and the creator of the Millionaire Car Salesman Group. And again, I'm sprouting my wings. LA can't hold me down because the blind phone master had me locked up, hog-tied for like months. But I'm on my own. And so I'm going to do this podcast with a very good friend of mine and one of the industry's top trainers, consultants, but he's also dipping outside the automotive industry. So we're going to get into that too. So let's say hello to my man, Cory Mosley.
What's good? I like the after effects. Listen, super excited to be on, super excited to be addressing the millionaire car salesman community. I think there's just a fantastic job that you've done. You know, these things a lot of times are labors of love, building these groups. I have never done a group for the reason of that labor. And my mind just takes me in probably too many different directions. So I just commend you for building this thing up, and I'm happy to provide any value I can, anytime I can, to this audience.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. A lot of people think that having a Facebook group, it's like you have a group and they shall come, but we're really specific. The content we have in the group, the people we have in the group, so I appreciate the kudos. But man, you're about to bless this mic with your knowledge and information. So Cory, let's just jump into that. Kind of just tell the audience a little bit about your background and your automotive background specifically.
Well, I came into business in the late 90s. Fundamentally, I was supposed to be a lawyer. My favorite show at the age of 13 was LA Law. I wanted to be Arnie Becker and have the Rolls Royce and kind of have that deal. And I got into a law program when I was 14 with one of the largest law firms in Virginia, and realized that I looked at my mentor and I saw my mentor driving his beat up Mazda 6. I saw him looking like death warmed over. I saw him, lamenting about the 100-hour work weeks and how if he just sticks it out there in 10 years, maybe if he's lucky, he can make partner. And I realized, and the $150,000 in debt that he had to the law school and to his college education. And I realized that probably wasn't what I wanted to do. Having some skills, I've been always training as an actual speaker, as a communicator. Since I was 14, I competed in Catholic forensics leagues and every organization I could that had whether extemporaneous or prepared speech, which are, two different ball games. But so I knew I had that communication skill. So where does somebody with communication skills that wants to have quote unquote unlimited income opportunities go? And I wanted a car. So this was back, obviously, when you still had demos, right? So I wanted to take advantage of a demo. I wanted to use some skills to say, hey, why don't I get in the car business? And I'm probably, chances are, I don't know how you may get up to 1 million episodes and finally find somebody, but I'm probably one of the only people that you ever have on that drove a demo to their high school graduation.
Definitely. That's pretty cool.
So that's literally when I got into business and came into business with the sell me this pen nonsense and simply went from there. My first sales manager, who's got to be dead. I asked about him the other day. He's got to be dead by now because he was old then. But, gave me the Columbo two-step and he, had a raspy voice, smoked 2 packs a day. And it was just a classic rough and tumble, sit him down and come get me sales manager. And that's how I came into the business.
Okay, so what's kind of cool is I've known you for a very long time. We've been friends for over a decade, almost a half now. We're both at that age where we're not old, but we're old enough that I feel myself telling stories. Like I was at a dealership yesterday and I was like, back in the day, we didn't have CRMs. We had paper desk logs and highlighters and index cards. Like
green screen. Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. Let's paint the picture for these millennials and the Gen X, Gen Z people and those little guppies that are out here listening to this podcast. Right. Like paint a picture. What was it like technology wise, resource wise when you sold cars in the beginning?
Well, listen, when we came in, Reynolds green screen, that was the deal. Green or blue screen, you had either one. 3x5 cards and your Filofax folio deal. You had a telephone, old school. I mean, it didn't spin on the dial. So, I mean, I came into business in the late 90s. So, but regular telephone, and that's what you had. And that was the dream. The dream was you're your own business. I be the dealer, providing you the inventory. I'm providing you customers. I'm doing the advertising for you. You've got a telephone. You've got your skill. I've got the inventory. You have this infinite opportunity within my pay plan to earn unlimited earnings within my pay plan. And that was the technology that was available. I mean, for Foursquare paperwork, you did your follow-up off your sheets. If you were at an advanced dealership, you had carbon copy kind of sheets that you worked off of. If you weren't, you did your own thing. And I had the 3x5 cards and, made my phone calls. I had my first desk, actually my second desk. I almost skipped the first place I ever went because it was just a bad situation. They tried to jam up a friend of mine and it just wasn't a good look. So I always fast forward to kind of the better place I worked, which was the next place. But my desk was something that you would probably pick up at Office Max if you were getting like your first desk for your child. They were out of room in the bullpen. So it was a major bullpen. They were out of room in the bullpen. So it was this extra room. There was this +1 room that you're on your way to the office that was kind of there. So just imagine going out and buying one of those $99 desks from Office Max and like IKEA, you can put it together. So that was my desk, the little hutch. And that was the deal. You were dialing, I received no training for the better part of my automotive career. So it was pure observation, right? I obviously don't watch the 3-car guy, watch the 20-car guy. I worked with a guy named Al Bowers. Al Bowers, probably today, one of the greatest closers I've ever seen. Al Bowers, and this was a time when you could work your own schedule if you sold cars. You could do anything. You could take a dump on the dealer's desk if you made him money back in that time. So, and Al was that guy. Drove the big demo, I was working for a GM store, drove the big Tahoe, parked up front in the Salesman of the Month thing, which was basically the Al Bowers parking spot because nobody else ever did it. And Al would golf for the first half of the month, and about the 15th, he'd show up, and then he'd sell 20. Nothing outrageous, no Frank Kranittis, no Ali Raiders. He would come and sell, 18, 20 cars, make his $15,000, and then go about his business. So I at least had that observation, to see an alternative. But there was there was no Bradley on Demand. There was no Mosley Toyota 7. There was no Cardone VT. Nobody. There was none of that even existed.
So, but let me jump in on that though. Not just there's no training, but what I'm trying to frame for the listeners is that talking about living off the land. I mean, like right now, look at what everybody in the automotive industry has. They have the internet. They've got Facebook, social media, LinkedIn, Instagram. They've got video. They've got all these massive communication mediums with text messaging, chat. That's what I'm talking about. Like I really feel like I'm like a grandfather that's 70 years old as far as like internet sales goes, because when we first came up in the business, they had none of that. So my point is that I believe that both of us were successful back then, but can you imagine, this is what I was just building towards, can you freaking imagine you being in the car industry back in the late 90s, but with all these resources that we have up today? I mean, so remember when you were selling cars, or reverse it, if you were selling cars today, but not with all of the, because me and you are not going back to selling cars. I mean, we're at a different level in life right now. Not that there's anything bad about it, but again, it's just there's different levels to life and to career. But if you were either back then with all the resources of today, or today, if you were selling cars today, but not downgrading from Cory Mosley, global entrepreneur, best-selling author, but just as a salesperson with these resources, how much more successful do you think you could be?
Well, I mean, I have to tell you, I think it's infinite only to the degree of training, right? So if my dealer continued to not invest in training as the way most of them did, and if I was never trained on the real estate belief system that I like to talk about of self-education, because in automotive, we don't believe in that. Right? as two guys who do workshops, right? Oh, Cory, would love to come to your deal, but my dealer won't pay. And
right.
So if I still didn't know, if I didn't know about self-education and my dealer didn't expose me, then no, all those tools would still go unused, as they do in dealerships all over the country. Now, where you are fortunate, as I was sitting with one of our clients the other day, talking to one of the salespeople who came to me and said, hey, can you bring in some of the stuff you use, some of these selfie sticks and some of these things you do for video? I'm trying to do better with video. And I brought him everything that we use, the little microphones and the little Rodes and everything to show him. And he was telling me that he was probably 1 or 2 cars away from being number one salesman. Only been in the business a year. And in a dealership where average tenure for salespeople is like 9 or 10 years, they don't have a ton of turnover. So to think that I'm a guy that's been in a dealership for 15 years and I'm getting ready to get smoked by a guy that's been there a year with a brand, Honda store. So you're talking about a brand that has 65% return on business, retention on business, in a store that has 60% return on business. How in God's name? So that's the testament to what's available to us now. You think about being in an internet department where the internet department was predicated on a fax machine.
Yeah, I remember.
Right? Auto by tel leads came over, dude, on a fax machine. They didn't even come through an email.
The OEM leads too used to come from the fax machine.
Yes. Yeah. And so, you had people calling themselves in the internet business. GM Buy Power was not even a lead system. It was only an inventory system.
Right. So, Cory, I love that because I know what you're talking about, but I want you to introduce that concept, again, fully, the whole real estate concept that you're talking about. Let's talk about it a lot because I do agree. What you just said is really strong. None of this matters if you don't have two things, I think, a training mindset and you actually train, because you could train, but if you're like half-assed through training, I want to tell you a quick story. Today, I'm going through a dealer group and because we're both on the Lightspeed platform, what I'm finding patterns of craziness is that people are putting, whether it's Cardone, me, you, whoever on Lightspeed on these virtual training, they're playing the videos, but not paying attention to them and then trying to guess. And how you tell is when you run the analytics, if you see that somebody took watched the video 12 times, but they failed 6 or 8 times with it, there's a massive amount of fail rate because they're either distracted or not paying attention, but more probably they're trying to game the system. So my point being is this: please speak about the mindset of training and then that real estate mindset of really, education and self-education is your responsibility. Elaborate.
Okay, so and real quick, I want to comment on the VT thing because I have to laugh because I'm notorious. People, the biggest running thing, like literally if you don't capitalize a word in my system, it will not. So if you don't pay hyper attention, because I'm big on the I'm big on that one, not the multiple choice. I'm big on the drag and drop stuff. So if you do in our deal, you're really dead. So it's almost hilarious. That's the number one thing I hear when I come in the store that is on our platform. I'm like, oh, I can't. Why do you have to spell correct? Or why did I have to put a capital there? Well, if you were writing an email to a customer, would you spell it wrong? Would you not put a capital? So why is punctuation not important? So I laugh because if you go on our system, you'll see that 22 times failed and then finally because you didn't know how to put a space. So dude, if you don't know how to communicate that way, you're gonna be affected by it. But the mindset piece. And listen, mindset's not new, right? It's tough to try to reinvent the wheel when we had these conversations. What you try to hope in these type of situations is that somebody comes at something from a way that maybe you just hear it differently, right? Like your people are not hearing mindset for the first time on this conversation. So the thinking has to be when I go to my mindset is this a business? Because the car business can be a business career or it can be a rest stop, right? It is both of those things for people. So real estate got hot, people left the car business. Real estate tanked, now all the GMs, GSMs, F&I guys are now back in the dealership. So, I've met people that are trying to be police officers. And they're like, hey, it takes forever to get a call back, so I'm going to work in the BDC until the so-and-so police department calls me in for an interview. you're never going to get those people to have that mindset. There's a reason, I think it's interesting. Like, there's a reason why we talk about kind of the same people to a certain extent, right? We'll talk about a Frank. We'll talk about an Ali. We'll talk about, a Kenny Landrum down. There's how many salespeople? You're good with the stats. There's tens of thousands of salespeople in the country, right?
It's about almost 400,000. 400,000.
So there's 400,000. Doesn't it strike you as odd that we talk about the same dozen? It's the same dozen that make the rounds. It's the same thing with the dealers, right? It's very similar. The same kind of, what's Brian Benstock doing at Paragon? Like,
right.
What about the other 14,000 retailers? And that's a mindset issue. And that's why we have things like the 80-20 rule. That's why you have all those things that come up, is because you're never going to get everybody to see that. What you will be able to do, though, is reach that one person, right? And have that effect on that one person. And then try to do that at scale. And that's why mindset is so important. If I'm thinking about this as a career, then I have to be thinking about everything that I can do from a resource end. Now, the tricky part about free resources, the tricky part about free versus paid, because I was having this debate with somebody the other day that was making the point that, you don't need courses, you don't need to buy in that. Everything you need is out on the internet, right? So obviously, as somebody who's in the education space and likes to keep my lights on, I have to take a certain issue with that in this capacity, because one of the challenges with the internet is everything's on the internet. and there's so much information. So now if I am someone that has the mindset, I want to take control of my career, I'm faced with investing in a workshop. I'm on the fence about coming to IS-20G. Will that be good for me or not? And then I'm like, oh, well, I can go on all these forums and I could go and do all this stuff. What do? I could do this for free, or I could make an investment over here. And there has to be something to be said for organized information, right? Structure, path, blueprint, framework. Those are the things that have a greater impact than simply just trying to absorb information. Because you can read stuff all day long and still not get anything done, right? So and you have so many people out here that want to be that so bad want to be celebrities from the standpoint, not that they're not doing some good things in the store, not that they're not doing that, but sometimes you ask yourself, are they more focused on being a celebrity or really handling their business? And that's my concern with the new wave, is it can be dangerous out here, for people who want to share their opinions. And you could have people that listen to that opinion, and that person can be heading them down a train wreck. But it sounded good, or I caught their video, or I watched them on YouTube, and they have a slick montage, and like, oh, let me listen to this person. And you go implement that, especially in our business, as you and I know from going across the country. You can have a framework that's successful, right? But if you think selling cars in Muscatine, Iowa is exactly the same way as it is in Queens, New York, I would agree. I want to debate that.
I would agree. And I want to just kind of build on what you just said. I think that there's value and a strategy for each of the mediums. For example, because we mentioned I created the Millionaire Car Salesman group. I love the group, but to your point, it's not organized. We're up to almost 13,000 high-level, highly interactive members. So the feed constantly is flowing. So it's almost like you're thirsty and you got to stick your head under the waterfall, not the faucet, but the waterfall, and just drink. And then, but be careful that you might drown as you're trying to get a gulp. And so there is some value with that. What I would say that the biggest value, if I was a dealer or manager for my group, is that you have access to 13,000 people and you could get an opinion. And so you could survey people in real time. Like you have crowdsourcing, you could crowdsource for information, you could network. It could help you, prevent a bad decision competition. Hey, anybody, have experience with this vendor or that vendor? Oh, hell yeah. Hey, I have an idea. Can you take a look at this? I think that's one of the best values of a group. And with the features that we have with the mentorship program, maybe that. But to create, to your point, there's no way in hell that would be my training strategy for my career to support my family, my 4 kids, my wife, and try to build out a career. And so I think that people misunderstand the different mediums and how to utilize them to correctly. Like anything has some value, but there's definitely, Covey says there's a preeminent. What is the most powerful training? In my opinion, Cory, I think it's live training, whether it is, if you are a dealership, having a trainer come out to you and spending time with you, because then there's all the distractions are stopped theoretically. You're in there, the trainer consultant, high-level trainer consultant is in your environment. They could actually see things that the client, the person's trying to be trained or fixed might not even be able to articulate. But a high level, just like a high level doctor is evaluating a patient, they could pick up stuff and analyze stuff that that the person might not even mention that they have this ache or that ache. So I think that there's value of that, but it is the most expensive part. If you get anybody that's at our level, we're like, it's $10,000 a day and up for a real solid trainer with 20 years experience and, most importantly, a proven track record. So then there's a cost benefit analysis of, do I just have one trainer once every 6 months, which is kind of stupid? And then to Brad Lee's point, training, if you speak to somebody, that's just really exposing, in my opinion, which I've adopted from Brad. And I'd love to hear your opinion on this. I really believe that, and Brad turned me out with this one, is that real true training and learning comes from 2 things: repetition, and time or experience. And so certain things that would really create training, utilization, comprehension, etc., you can't get from certain mediums. So what are your thoughts on that part right there about, having even a high-level trainer like us take you to church for an hour is one thing, but how much real training, comprehension, understanding that you'll be able to utilize from just, going to an evangelization ceremony versus having somebody be at your dealership for a week, or versus having Mosley 24/7 or Bradley on Demand for like a year. I mean, like there's different levels to utilization.
Yeah. So let me unpack. I was literally taking some notes while you were talking because it popped all these thoughts in my head. I think the key from my end is immersion, right? Immersion is the right word from my perspective. So for example, now we don't do a ton of retail. I've recessed from a lot of my direct retail business over the past few years. So, but our strategy with the retailers, for example, if I was coming in the store and doing work, I'm not even touching you until your team has been on my system. So you're not even going to hear. So by the time I get there live, you should know foundational things from my system. Now, I don't have 1 million hours of content like Bradley on Demand has. So our system is very surgical in that there's very specific things in this time frame that we want to kind of get accomplished. It doesn't have the same immersive kind of full scale deal as you've put together, which I think is phenomenal, by the way. And you know how I feel about that. So you're not even going to see. So by the time I get there, you're going to see my face. You're going to recognize me from the lot by the time I get out of the rental car. Right. For the reason that you've seen my face so much. And now conceptually, when I'm there live, I can have a greater impact because I can be more efficient with time and the time for dollar exchange, right? Because I'm not starting from scratch. So now I'm going through something that you should have tested on, or if you haven't, or if you failed at it, then I know that already going there, right? I know who my 3 or 4 special people I need to pour into a little differently are. So I can be more effective in a live environment. I can turn that live environment to more of a immersive experience by way of role playing or scenario driven things instead of PowerPoint driven things, right? But you have to have that immersion. I laugh. I remember somebody told me, and again, it was a hater because they were a BDC manager in the store, and if they had their druthers, they would be us, on the road, which people think is so glamorous. But it was a hater statement, and the hater statement was, "Oh, well, you know what? Real trainers and real speakers don't need PowerPoints." And when people say dumb stuff like that to me, it concerns me because what it says is that you don't understand learning. Right? Go tell Nancy Duarte and her multi-million-dollar visual company that focuses completely on visual impact for learning and has scientifically proven the advantages of visuals. Tell that to a visual person versus a kinesthetic person or an auditory person that they don't need that. So it tells me that you don't understand learning, right? So people need to hear the voice. People need to hear the podcast, but they need to watch videos. They need to see live. And I think if you're a dealer or an individual committed to self-education, your attitude has to be ongoing learning, and ongoing learning revolves around multiple touch points. So you're going to need that immersion. The second thing that you talked about that I wanted to make the point, this is like cathartic a little bit. Like I like to, I do so much hosting that it's nice to be on the other side, but it's cathartic for a moment, because the other thing that drives me insane is when I hear people, you talk about being in the store or, higher level and experience. And I hear people, all these kind of trainer shootouts, and we're going to do this and do that. And, if you're not working a lot, you're not really relevant and all this stuff, which is nonsense to me too. And the reason why it's nonsense is because I will gladly take Mr. and Mrs. Jones on a Corolla deal, right? You go close a car dealer for 6 figures of business, a 3-year contract, go close a manufacturer, and then come back and tell me about your closing skills, right? So I don't want to hear this dumb stuff, because as you go through time, if you're any good, you're acquiring new skills, and those skills become more valuable for you. And when you start talking about day rates and what somebody gets and all that stuff, talk to me about ROI. Don't talk to me about cost. Don't talk to me about investment. I go into your store and take your 30-unit deal to 100 units. There's no amount that you could have paid me that would have been, it should have been more. Whatever you paid me, it should have been more, right? Because you keep the increase, and then if you keep what was done in place, you keep that forever. And you never pay me again. So, I mean, I know you've got some creative contracts over there, but I don't know anybody that's got a forever contract. Right. So, Mr. Dealer, you're going to pay me on the upside for the next 10 years, right? I don't know anybody that's got that deal signed yet. But so it's a silly exchange. And that all goes to mindset. And for guys like you and I who are also outside in the regular world, like the speaker world and all those different things, those guys who are getting paid what they're getting paid to do 1-hour keynotes, right, are getting that because of their impact per minute, not the day rate, we're arguing over day rates, dude. There's people you and I know people that are getting double and triple to go keynote for an hour in some exotic paradise.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So I think people I think you just have to have perspective on that, and it's your impact. And when guys come to me, I coach a handful of coaches, consultants, guys who have started their own shingle in this space because I don't really compete in that space anymore. So I'm happy to pour into those guys. But when I talk to them, I said the one thing you have to understand: this isn't about how great you were as a GM, how great you were as a BDC manager, how many stores you ruled over. You're going to have to translate all of that to how to be in a B2B environment with a dealer, how to implement a strategy with someone who's not going to support you the same way maybe you were supported. How do you serve all these masters? How do you serve the dealer who has his agenda, the GM who has his agenda, and all of these things? So those are some of the things, again, I'm always talking to people about from the standpoint of your business.
Let's go back, because we could just freestyle, because I love talking to you. You know what I mean? I think that, no, seriously, you have a plethora of knowledge.
This is what happens when you don't have a direct, organized path, like we just. Yeah,
but I like that. To me, it's like it's fluid. So let's go back to, you made a statement before about, again, that real estate mentality. So, and we've talked about this before, and you shared that opinion before, and I would concur. But when people graduate from real estate school, from Century 21 or whatever, real estate school, they know that they need to figure out a way to buy a billboard or do radio, TV, diner mats, and all this other stuff. And to your point, most salespeople in the automotive industry are like, "What, brother? I'm telling you, I was just at a dealer group Thursday and Friday, and I was just at another dealer group on Monday in 2 different states." So they represent a total, probably between all their stores, maybe like 14 rooftops between both groups, but I was directly there with probably about 3 or 4 of the stores out of the groups. Now, my point being is I asked every one of them, if they had their own website. Not one salesperson from all these stores, part of a large, respectable dealer groups, not one of them had their own marketing budget. One person said that they spent about $30 a month. So talk about, please, because we've been kind of going in different directions, go back to that real estate mentality, how real estate agents are going through training are conditioned and they got to self-educate, self-promote, et cetera, et cetera. So jump back in on that. Explain that clearly.
Well, so, listen, there are some parallels and there's some parallels that are not comparable, right? Because you go into a real estate environment and it's all self-education because you really only have somebody's shingle, right? You don't have inventory. So there are parallels, but it's not 100%. So there are some variables that you have to consider. I go out and be a real estate agent. The focus is getting me licensed to do it. But once that happens, now I got to find my own house to work under, whether it's Century 21 or Remax. And then even inside that house, I need to go out and make my own listings. Here, obviously, I come into the car business. I go to work for a Toyota store. I don't have to go find my own inventory to sell. So the mentality, so that's why real estate is driven completely that way. It's not 100% apples to apples.
Right.
But what I have to be thinking about here coming into the sales environment, because we hear people complain all the time, well, there wasn't enough advertising. There wasn't enough traffic in the store. Oh, the leads suck. We're not buying enough leads. We're not buying the right leads. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. As a crutch to now not go and look at what you could be doing. Right. And again, that goes back to the mentality. If you get up every day saying, this is my career, I'm committed to this career, and I need to make as much out of it as I possibly can, then your thinking will be different, number one. I contend that the majority of people don't do that.
Agreed.
Right? They look at what's the side hustle they can get into, or what will the real job be? What will the real career be that I can look towards while I kind of do this, and whether get my draw or I get this, or, if I could just make a few bucks to do X, Y, Z while I get ready to go do my next thing. So that's the problem. That's problem number one. That's why by and large, we don't have that mindset. Problem number two is that I argue that people just haven't been exposed. It's DK, deficiency of knowledge. They just haven't been exposed. By my own website, I didn't know. That didn't even cross my mind. How do you do that? I did a clinic in a store on LinkedIn. 20 salespeople in a room. Who's on LinkedIn? 2 hands go up, right? So how many of you like referrals? Oh, everybody's hand goes up. How many of you get a ton of referrals every month? Nobody hands goes up. So why wouldn't you professionally? Because see, why LinkedIn is more interesting than Facebook is it removes the trepidation that a lot of people have about this personal connection that most people don't really create with their customers. If I up you and turn you into a spot 3 hours later, we liked each other for 3 hours, but that doesn't mean I want you seeing all my baby pictures from the last 6 months. However, I go find you on LinkedIn, which is a professional network. It's very easy for me then to professionally network with you, ask for a recommendation that now puts me on your profile and now allows me to build that up. We focus a lot on Dealer Rater and all these other things, but LinkedIn is so highly ignored from that position and from that standpoint. So many salespeople aren't on it. Now, when I left that room, 50% had started profiles. So it wasn't, we're so quick to call it lazy. We're so quick to call it lack of commitment. I think a lot of it is deficiency of knowledge. Not everyone knows who Sean Hayes is. You know what I mean? Not everyone can model some of these people that we hear about because they're not in that bubble.
Right. Okay, I think that is a very, very accurate statement. And even more if we want to remind you what you said earlier in the interview is about the wrong information out there. So not only is there deficiency of knowledge, but there's a lot of Facebook frauding that's going on, or a lot of social media grandstanding. And so when somebody is not exposed to real information or to a real subject matter expert, there's a void that's filled with anybody that's just an idiot that's got a camera or an access to a microphone, and they could just start putting all this crazy shit with a little bit of truth, a little bit of value, but mostly disorganized or stupidity. And what it does is it gives somebody a bad taste in their mouth, whether they're individual or their dealership especially. I can't tell you how many times I've had dealerships say, well, we had a BDC. Well, that's great, but you never had one for me. You never had one set up the right way. You never had one, structured the proper way. That's like being divorced and driving your next girlfriend, your future next wife crazy by saying, you're not going to cheat on me again, are you? And like, dude, you can't base your current relationship or your future relationship based on the horrible experiences that you had with whoever crazy was in your life beforehand. Okay, so let's jump further. So I want to hear Cory's success tips. You've worked and you've coached individual sales professionals, managers, dealer principals, and manufacturers. Let's just boom, 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 like some just specific actionable things. If I said these words, Cory, I truly want automotive sales to be my career, and I want to make a fuck ton of money. And I said that, you know what I mean? This ain't a Christian show. I'm going to turn around and say whatever I want to say. You know what I mean? So I don't want to make a little bit of bullshit money. I want to get fucking paid, because I believe that you're in car sales, not because you like people and, you like cars. I mean, like, dude, you're not a mechanic. I mean, you could go to FEMA or the Red Cross. You're here because you have an unlimited earning potential. You could make as much money as you can earn. If I bought into that, and I'm going to you, Cory, as my coach, give me just some really big tips on how I get started. Let's start from first the green pea to somebody that's just like, I believe I could fly. And then we're going to move into like a veteran. Good.
Well, I think the first thing I think the first key is going to be, right, I need to be at the right store with the right pay plan and the right people. Right?
Sorry. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop you. Thank you so much, because I don't think that's ever really talked about on the show yet. And my God, you think about this. You can't find love with a hooker, you know what I mean, or a porn star. It's just not going to happen. You can't turn around and find a career if you are, if you're working at some shitty dealership that's got no ethics and no structure. So talk about that first. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be number one. I will tell you. So one of the best commercials I've ever heard. I'm going to tell you the commercial and how it segues to this. One of my favorite commercials I talk about all the time is a Sirius radio ad, and it's for a company called the Income Store. And the guy comes on and he says, "Let me ask you a question. If I asked you who would win in a bicycle race, the last year winner of the Tour de France or a 10-year-old?" you would tell me the Tour de France. He said, now, if I gave you a little extra context, I'm paraphrasing. He said, but what if I told you that the Tour de France guy had to ride a tricycle and the 10-year-old was on a 10-speed? He says, it's all about the vehicle that will determine the outcome. You're in the wrong vehicle, it doesn't matter who you are or what your skill level is. So if you're at a dealership that has a shitty pay plan, I get to use it. I love it. It's only on your podcast can I curse. If you're someone that has a shitty pay plan, or you're working for people, not even ethics. I'll save that for a different story. But just people who aren't people you want to work for, right? Managers that I tell dealers, if your people won't run out in the middle of the street for you, then there's something wrong, right? If they're not getting to that level of commitment, they're not going to be as committed as you because they don't have equity. But if you can't get that level of loyalty, I know dealers who their own people don't even recognize them. That's how detached they are from their staff. That new people show up and go, who is that guy? Oh, that's the owner. So his point was very clear. So if you're not in that situation where you actually, people love to go, well, just work your pay plan. That's the way to make money. If my pay plan sucks or it's not structured to allow me to make money, then that's not going to be possible. It breaks my heart to hear a guy tell me he sold 20 cars. Go ahead.
So no, let's build on that, because this is why I like being free stock. I love where we're going with this. Yeah. So let's be specific. Give us an example of what a good pay plan is. So do you believe in a draw? Do you believe in commissions? Do you believe in getting paid on, on the back end, on whether it's F&I or after sale? And if you don't, are you getting robbed? So let's just, and again, there's so many different combinations, but what would you say is a good starting point?
So listen, I'm going to be very broad. The reason why I don't get pinned down on some of these technical questions is because people treat them as gospel.
I
And
agree.
I've said things like statistics or things like that. People go back and they try to change things and they implement them, and it wasn't right for their store. Right. So, and your manufacturer can drive a pay plan, right? If you have if you have a feast or famine style manufacturer, how you can pay somebody is very different from a structural standpoint. Big holdbacks versus slim to none. Is there stair step money? Where does money come from? But what I will say though is that I have to have a legitimate opportunity inside of that environment. One of the strongest plans I saw, not from a percentage standpoint, but from an option standpoint, was this idea that I had an option to be on a more secure system, right? That had a greater salary base and then rewarded me on volume and did that. Or I had a full throttle commission option. And I had those two options because those two options appeal to two different types of people in terms of where someone's mindset is. We make the assumption that that I need 18 killers on my showroom floor, which doesn't always contribute to great CSI, by the way. But I need 18 killers, or anybody who won't do feast or famine can't be any good, right? There's some people that are just wired differently. There's some people whose situations in life are just different. But I have to have an effective pay plan that doesn't choke me. A great example, packs, new car packs. So I worked at a store that had a 750 new car pack. So guess what happened? When I was in a deal that hit 750, which paid me the same $75 between 0 and 750, I could care less what happened in the deal.
Right.
I'll get up. Oh, no, you don't want to pay that? Hold on, sir. I'll be right back. I'd go to the machine, make me a cup of tea, sip the tea for a few minutes, and I'm just being honest, and go to the desk and say, yeah, they're not going for it. I'm not going back and fighting for $0. That's not how salespeople are wired.
Right.
Oh, well, you're not doing your job. Don't give me a framework. I talked about framework. Don't create a framework for me that doesn't want me to go out and work for you. So if you're trying to, and some of my over my time in the business, almost 20 years, 15 years consulting, I have dealers that are great friends, like dealers that drive their camper to my house and camp out in my driveway. And like, we have that kind of relationship. So I say this, and I would say this to them, and I've said this to them, but if you're designing your pay plan so you can extract everything as a dealer out of your deal, so you can make your boat payments and send your kids to college on the dock fee and all that stuff, that is 100% your right as a business owner to do that, 100%. But don't complain when you don't have a winning team. So if it's difficult for me to make money because every deal's a flat, I can't live off flats, or I can't build a big business off of $75 flats. Now I can build it. I guess I can. You got $1,000 flat, I can do that. But so I have to have, in that commission environment, I simply have to have a pay plan that rewards my effort. Right? You want bell to bell, you want this, you want that. I have to reward my effort. To watch a guy sell 20, explain to me how a guy sells 20 cars, makes $4,000, and a guy sells 10 cars and makes $10,000. Right. How does that happen? That's not just skill, that's pay plan.
Let me build on that. I want your opinion on this since we flushed it out. I agree with what you're saying. And going back to the manufacturer, that's a good point, but let me give you a different direction on that point. Some manufacturers are really, really strong with spin money. To me, if I'm an automotive professional, I don't give a shit where the money's coming from if it's legal and it's and I can earn it. Meaning that if I go to a manufacturer, I work at a manufacturer that offers zero spin money or a ghetto ass $50 check, but then they have another manufacturer that's offering $100 up to $500 and different, and depending on what level certification, master certified, I might have even more money too. I think manufacturer OEM spins is definitely a plus. Also, having the ability to not just sell new cars, you have the ability to sell used cars because they might have higher gross. Also, we mentioned before slightly, possibly getting paid on the back end or taste. There's different stores have different things where, they save half of the etch and whatever package it is, and it's given towards, a Christmas bonus. That might be something. But also, if there's any bonuses, they're good bonuses, or there's spiffs, or there's incentives. And the other thing is, in my opinion, the chance to earn, to be able to get to that next bonus point or that next mark. In my opinion, one of the gifts of being in sales is you can make as much money as you could earn, but sometimes it is exhausting. And what stops somebody from keep going to the next further? It's like to your point, why bother? If I could, if my efforts do not are not compensated by my return, then there's going to be a point when you hit a point of diminishing return in my efforts where it's like, okay, this is all I'm getting paid, and I have no light to be able to get to that next level in life. Why the F am I going to turn around and do more, be more, and achieve more if all it is doing more and being more, but I can't achieve more? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, you're talking to somebody who sold Kias in the late 90s.
Here we go.
Okay? So the pure fact that I even said that just set somebody's check engine light off, okay?
Right.
The fact that we're talking about, right? My first demo, I want you to imagine me riding around in a 99 Kia Sportage, okay, with steel hubcap wheels. So my whole motivation to sell Kias was $300 spin checks plus commission. So when you talk about that idea, I mean, that was certainly a key incentive in putting that effort into selling that vehicle, which, of course, Kia today is a completely different story than it was in the late 90s. Now, you talk about the spend money, you talk about that being an advantage, but I think, Sean, the caveat to your readers is, I know dealers that keep that money.
Right.
So, again, goes back to pay plan. I think ultimately, I was taking some notes while you were talking, pay plan should align to goals, right? BDC, we're going to pay you when the car sells. But your responsibility is to get them all in. So if you have a shitty showroom sales conversion process when somebody shows up where there is no TO, there is no real presentation, or any of those things take place in the steps, and now you got a 30% showroom close ratio, I'm going to starve because I did my job, but because somebody else didn't do theirs. Now, I get the logic. Well, paying out is easier to do when there's revenue tied to the payout, but that wasn't my responsibility. So I think pay plans have to align to goals, right, of what you want. We're a volume store. We blow everything out. But I have but your bonus plan, your bonuses start at some ridiculously high number. You want me to have a volume mindset and not be as gross conscious, because most people don't have that option. The desk controls that, right? Most salespeople don't have the option when they go to the desk on what they present numbers for. So if it's a volume play, and that's why I said it goes back to the manufacturer. If I have money, if there are factors there, if I'm XYZ and I'm getting $400 a car retro on XYZ happening, well, I have to take that into effect. But if that $400,000 or that extra $500,000 is just going to the dealer's bottom line and never seeing the light of day to the salespeople or even the management team, we assume that the managers are all high in the hog. They've got some real crappy setups too. Right. So I think there has to be an alignment, but that's the key. I got to make sure I'm in the right house. So
good. So if we're in the right dealership and we've got a good pay plan, what's next? What are the other pillars or strategies for profound success in a career in automotive sales?
Listen, I have to, and this is applicable across the board. I mean, if I was telling this to a mainstream quote unquote entrepreneur in any segment, but I need to have, so I need mindset is going to be key, right? So I have to have mindset as a foundational pillar. What's my mindset going to be? And what can I prepare for? I've always contended, especially coming out of the internet and BDC realm, that one of the reasons why we have stats like 7 months average turn on an internet manager and some of those things that have been around for a while is driven by the fact that we don't properly prepare people for the expectation. Right? We get somebody, a BDC rep comes in and we get them jacked up on all the opportunity and all the leads and all this is going to happen. But what we don't tell them is 70% of the dials you make today will not answer the phone. What we don't tell them necessarily is that you can have a 120, 180-day buyer on your hands. You could get Jackie Jones's information today, and she actually may not buy a car till January, but you have to commitment to stay with her through that process. So we don't prepare them. So same thing coming into the business. I come into the business, I'm going to crush it. I've got all this energy. I've got all this fervor for the business. And you know what? I have a 6-car month out of the gate. Now I go, where's all this unlimited opportunity that was in the ad, or you endless, limitless, everything's limitless. What happened to that pitch, right? So we don't prepare people for what the expectations are. We don't put them on the plan. That's what I love. That's why, and I'm not just saying this to bring it up, but that's why I love some of the things that you're doing with that money mind map and some of those things where you can actually hatch a plan. So guy tells me he wants to sell 20 cars. Okay, well, how? Right? How do you back into that to make that? So, but to do that, I have to have the right mindset, right? I have to have mindset. I have to have clarity. I have to have clarity of what the purpose of what I'm trying to accomplish is, right? And then what's my execution plan? So if my goal is to maximize my pay plan, I understand my pay plan, I'm with the right people, I'm with the right brand, what are the things that have made other people successful? What could I model? Right? Modeling is a factor. Because I could easily see bad model and I could see good modeling in there. So I want to have the right mindset. I need to have clarity of purpose. I need to have my execution plan. And what is it that I don't know? And people skip that.
Let's go into here because I get this question a lot. I have my opinion, but we are both high-level trainers, high-level speakers, and both have VT platforms. How often should somebody train? And that's part one of the question. And part two is, I actually had this happen the other day, and I think I have recorded it on video. I haven't published it yet. I had a woman, nice woman, says, I have no time to train. Where do I find time to train? So the question is, how much training should somebody that's getting started in the industry, or somebody that could be in the industry for 20 years, but it's not really effective, how often should they train, and how do they find time to train? And speak about that from your perspective.
So number one, when somebody makes a statement like that, what that tells me is that they are restricting their training to what they believe to be their work hours.
Yes.
Now, the greatest lie that's been ever told in a dealership is I have no time. I've been in a dealership on the 31st of the month where people we're bell to bell, and there's people doing nothing, right? So this idea, I'm covered up. A GM told me, I'm covered up, Cory. I'm like, I'm in your system right now. You got like 7 cars out. What exactly are you covered up doing in particular? But and that goes back to mindset though, Sean. See, that's my point. You can't have one without the other. You can't have an eager learner who's looking to execute, who's looking to do whatever it takes, and be disconnected from actually doing those things. So that the person that makes that statement to me is not thinking about their time in a way that will allow for it. And also what they're doing is they are downplaying the value of getting better.
Right.
And you can't, my statement to dealers has always been, it is much easier for you, if you lost $100,000, if you were losing $100,000 a month, and somebody like myself came in and said, I can help you get that $100,000 back, I would have more of your attention than sitting in front of you saying you're missing $100,000 that you've never seen. The belief system is different. So to answer your question, number one, I need to do as much training as I need to do to fill the gaps in my skill set. Skill set mindset equation, I call it, right? So my skill set, I have to be doubling down. I'm all about playing to my strength. I don't want to fix. I'm never going to try to be a mathematical scientist, right? Now I could probably train at it all day long, but God probably had a different plan for me to use my mouth more than he did maybe my mathematical genius, right? So I'm going to focus on the things that help my skill set. And I can only respond to how often you train by on my personal. I'm always consuming information. And what I generally try to do personally is I try to consume information super early in the morning. And I'm not one of these 4 a.m. people, so I'm not even selling that idea. But before my work starts, I try to consume information then, or I try to consume information at the time at night when my when my work life has concluded in that essence. And the other thing that I do on weekends is I block time So it's very frequent for me Saturday, because I don't have the kids to truck around like you do. It's very normal for me to make a cup of coffee, go out on my patio, and catch up on my magazines or grab a book for reference and go through that. So you have to schedule it just like you do anything else.
Let me do this because I appreciate that. I have two big questions I want to get, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, and we're here for 2 hours. So the next question I have that I think is, especially for your background.
I think they'd stay on, though, for the 2 hours.
Hopefully they would, but I don't know if you're available. I was just going to start looking for a check for your time. I mean, so let me just turn around and get what I can get right now. So as an entrepreneur, I believe that car sales theoretically can be like owning your own business. But I think that it's too much in our industry that we just blanketly state that as a bullshit, fat out lie. Because if we just say the words that car sales is like owning your own business, but we never teach, show, demonstrate, or provide resources for an entrepreneur, then they're just an employee that has a fat carrot in front of their face that they're never going to reach. So let's just say that somebody truly believes from just listening to this podcast, or they saw you live or saw us live or whatever it is, and they said, okay, man, you had me at hello. Car sales is like is owning your own business. Here's where you really shine, Cory, because I think that even more valuable than just your automotive is what you do, with your Fearless Entrepreneur, podcast, with your book, is that you teach entrepreneurs in any vertical how to build and scale their business. So if I was coming to you as Cory Mosley, the entrepreneurial expert, and I said, okay, look, I'm in car sales. Show me how I could turn around and treat car sales as like my own business. Now, before you answer, I would say that partly we already talked about, yes, I'm at a great dealership. Yes, I got a good pay plan. Yes, you have me at hello. I'm educated. I'm on Mosley 24/7, Bradley On Demand. I'm listening to Millionaire Podcast. I listen to Fearless Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm reading Cory's book. I'm reading Sean's book. They got all that. Now it's action. How do I market? How do I turn around and even figure out a budget to invest in myself for marketing, advertising, generate leads, so I'm not depending on the dealership for my success or failure? And then also other things that entrepreneurs have to know how to do is, besides time manage, they've got marketing skills, advertising skills, PR skills. Now I'm going to shut up and you tell me, like, use me as an example. I'm Sean Bradley, car sales professional, and I'm asking you, Cory, straight up question, like directly, dude, I really want this to be like my own business. How do I do that? Where do I start?
All right. So, I mean, obviously you give me a lot to unpack here, but so the first thing I'm going to say is, listen, from my perspective, I'm fortunate enough to work with people, in this capacity, and it's not even because I'm so smart or I'm so great. It's mainly because I've just gone ahead of people, not gone ahead by means of being better. I just started at it early, right? So a guy who's starting a consulting business tomorrow, I provide a lot of value to because I started one 15 years ago. So I know where the bodies are buried. I know that there were a lot of mistakes that were made. There were a lot of mistakes. I've thrown money away, wasted money on different things, and trying and doing this and trying and failing and trying again. So my greatest asset is simply bringing information, some things that stay away from this because this is a disaster, and do more of this because this actually worked. And that's the greatest value, not the guru effect of any kind. So number one. Number two is, yes. So the problem with saying it's your own business is, of course, then I have to tell you how to then run your own business, right? You have to then learn how to do that. So, it's like having your own business. Okay, well, do you know how to run a business? No. Okay, so what's the value? So step one is to create the reality that, yes, it is like your own business, but unlike a dealer synergy or a Mosley Automotive, it's a franchise business, right? I go open a Subway. I can't do anything I want. I can't go to the public supermarket and ask for a pound of boar's head turkey and serve that at the Subway, right? So I want to clarify, when we say moving forward, the idea that being in the car business or being a salesperson is like owning your own business. It's like owning your own franchise business, where you have an infrastructure that you have to work under. You pay a royalty. That royalty, that 6% royalty that the guy at the Subway pays, right, is just in reverse. You receive a commission from your activity in your own business, operating under the franchise system of the brand and the owner that you work for. So inside that, I have to find a framework a structure, and a discipline.
Mm.
Okay. I have to have a framework that helps me achieve my goal. So if it's 20 cars and $10,000 in gross profit or $10,000 in income, I need to have a framework that will allow me to do that. So how many ups does that translate to? Knowing my numbers, what are my numbers? I talk to entrepreneurs and I ask them something as simple as, what does it cost to make the product that you want to make? And they can't answer that question. So how will you ever understand margin?
Right.
So I have to have the framework. Then I have to work inside the structure that I set, right? And then I have to have the discipline to continue to execute. And that's where so many people know what to do. So many people just don't do it. And there's a lot of reasons why that doesn't happen. Now, when you ask questions about what I should set the budget for, I got no idea how much you should spend to market your business. Here's what I do know. I know that everything that is involved in marketing is a test. And the way marketers get away, the greatest gift, the greatest cover a marketer has ever had is the legitimate answer to everything is we have to test it, right? We gotta run this ad. We're doing Facebook ads and stuff to promote the book and everything. I got this video where I'm doing this way and I'm saying this, and I got the other video where I'm doing it this way, and then we gotta test it. Meanwhile, Facebook gets paid either way.
Right.
The billboard theory was, I don't know if it's selling cars, but 200,000 people drive past. It's the greatest cover in the world. So right. I would never tell somebody, you need to be spending 20% of your income on marketing. Now, you could look at those numbers as it relates to a business and a business's marketing spend. But the tricky part of that is you've got organic marketing that you could be doing that has little to no cost, right? Just working Facebook and putting out content there. So I don't know that it's amount. I know that you have to test. And here's the key that I've always said. Where are my customers? Like, that's the simple answer to everything, right? So it's kind of like I can have the greatest ad for chocolate chip cookies. I can be running the greatest ad. My chocolate cookies are excellent, and I've got the best, funniest, coolest, most viral ad that you've ever seen, but I'm advertising it to diabetics. I probably have a problem there, don't I?
Absolutely.
So where are my customers going to be? So as a salesperson, well, go ahead. It's your show. Go ahead.
No. I want to, just because of the timing, I think that is perfect. Yep. Now, I think even more than me, you are in a position to give some really great advice on, let's say I'm successful, Cory. Let's say I'm listening to Mr. Mosley, AKA, you know what I call you, right?
No.
So I didn't say it. You know what I was going to say. Okay. So if I'm doing well and the money starts coming in, for my belief, millionaires in this country, Cardone said it before, Google's verified it, that most millionaires, at least in the United States, do not make millions of dollars a year. They make X amount of dollars, whether that's 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, et cetera, but they know how to turn around and invest their money, or at least not how to squander their money on dumbass shit. So my next question is this: how do you start to accumulate wealth? So this is the transition in the conversation and in the interview. I would like all of your experience personally, all the amazing people you've come across, 100 millionaires, billionaires, whatever. I'm making money selling cars like candy bars, whatever. What do I do with my money? What don't I do with my money? And how should I try to accumulate that wealth where I could actually one day become a millionaire, which is not even what it used to be, for the record.
Well, I mean, the one thing I have to tell you is that probably one of my greatest regrets is, and I don't know that I've ever even said this, but one of my greatest regrets is taking on the access of things way too early on in my career, way too early on in the business, and translating that. So the car business, we're taught everything needs to be big, right? We got to have our Rollie, we got to buy too much house, we got to buy, because all of those things drive our need to work 100 million hours and then justify it for the basis of those things. So, and our natural personalities, for many of us, as most of us are these DI, high A personalities and all these things, we're driven to that. And I drove right into that theory. So that's probably one of my greatest regrets is I'd be in a much better position if I had literally taken some of the runs that we had with our manufacturer deals and just some of these other good moments that we had and done a much better job. That is a regret. So again, where my value is trying to help shortcut people's situations, right? And I feel, and I will tell you, interestingly enough.
So Cory, wait a minute, on that point right there, I want to just build on that. So if I'm understanding you correctly, which is a great way to answer it in your version of this, is things that the average salesperson or a successful wannabe sales professional, they shouldn't turn around and just as soon as they make a stupid fat check, put it down on a down payment of a stupid fat house and, buy that Rollie and things like that. You caution them to be a little bit more conservative with their money instead of just squandering it. It might feel good or sound good at first, but you, with all your expertise and all your success and your credibility, that's a very powerful thing for me. I'm paying close attention to what you just said, is that one of your biggest regrets is that you overspent or invested or did things that you wish that you used that money for other things. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say there were two factors. Number one, we chased things that didn't have high value to me, but I thought were avenues for us to go in because it could be lucrative. And one of my 33 rules that I talk about in some of our entrepreneurship content is this idea: if it's all about the money, it may not work. So a lot of us, try to grab onto an idea or ride a wave, and then it doesn't work. So that was one of the areas. And number two was just the excess. Number two was just the belief system of having made it, quote unquote, and what that actually meant. And that was, we did it. I'll tell you a quick story. We did an experiment with shirts that I own in my house. And the experiment was my wife, I would wear a shirt and then my wife would take it and put it somewhere in our house and never replace it in my closet. And the goal was to see how many days I could go wearing a shirt without ever having to repeat it. And the moment that time, again, I've never even shared this story. And the moment of where that time hit almost 60 days, I knew that was excess. It was just unnecessary. And sometimes you learn these things later in life. Sometimes you go through pain, you go through struggle to learn these things in a different way. But that's one of those things, if I could do over again, if I can go back in the crystal ball, especially during some of our more interesting years, that's something I definitely would have done differently. So I would encourage people to, there's nothing wrong with having a good time. So number one, there's nothing wrong with having great experiences, right? So I wish I would have favored experiences. I mean, it was for the first 7 years, I don't think I took a vacation. I think it was ultimately marrying my wife where it was like, all right, we've never been on a vacation. We're going to go do a vacation. I don't think I took my first vacation until I was 30 or something like that. And that was just because it was work, and it was all excess. So if you're going to spend that money, if you're having good times, you're going to spend that money, make sure it's things that I can look back on. I can go look in my book, right? I can go look at our Vail, Colorado. I can look at our Vail book and look at those memories. We could have gone skiing somewhere else that was much less expensive. We didn't have to go to Vail to do it. One black person besides me. But I can look back on that memory of it, right? My closet has never given anything back to me.
Amen.
So I would think about that, and I would just say, I'm not an expert on investments, so again, I'll stay away from that. But having there's nothing more impactful than having free cash flow, right? But looking at things that have some foundational value to them. People love to go to real estate as a go-to, and I've dabbled in that area and some other things. But I think getting with people, just like in our business, dealers hire us and have hired us because of our expertise. So I think there's something to be said for financial planners. It surprises me the amount of people that I talk to that won't spend money on a good coach, that won't spend money on getting the help that they need, because there's all this DIY stuff. If you told me I can cut down something, I can cut down the learning curve from 30 days to 3 years by making an investment to do that, why wouldn't I do that? So I think getting with financial planners early. Financial literacy was not something big in my household, and I know you can relate to this.
Yes.
I don't have anywhere near your story, but on that area, that was just not a big component. So understanding financial literacy and getting with people who know what they're talking about, that can lay out a plan for you, and turning yourself over, letting the ego go, letting people in who know what they're talking about on the financial side to help you create those plans. That how many sales, Sean, let me ask you just a quick question. How many sales managers, how many people you know from 15 years ago in the business that now, obviously can't work in the business anymore, but have struggled in some way. But they were making, guys that were making 20, 30, 40, 50 grand a month, working the desk, GSMs, GMs. What happened?
Exactly. They didn't have a plan. And Cory, to your point, think about Tim Grover. I mean, like some of these amazing athletes, Michael Jordan, whoever you think is an amazing athlete, not only do they have a coach that's for their team or their sport, but they've got a myriad of coaches. There's financial coaches, there's motivational coaches, there's health and fitness coaches, there's skill coaches, and they invest in having the best team of people around them. But instead, in our industry, at least in the automotive sales industry, like you said, it's almost like, are you kidding me? What do you mean get a coach? Or what do you mean training? Instead of just reacting to it.
Those who can do, those who can
train
or coach. Like, dude, it's insane. They asked Eric Schmidt, former chairman of Google, what was the best piece of advice that he ever got in his career that he can think of. And he said the greatest advice he ever got was to get a coach. And that's coming from the chairman of Google. So if there was any guy who could be carrying around the ego of not needing help or needing coaching or needing that, he's probably one of the few guys that you could say as the chairman of one of the largest corporations and most successful companies in history that could have had that approach. And
Cory, wait a minute. Based on what you just said, he could have Googled it too, right? He could just Google that shit for free, but he got his own coach.
Yes, he could have.
All right, listen, I've taken a ton of your time. What I want to do is I want to give you the opportunity to just leave our audience with whatever message, whether it's your experience, whether it's your philosophy, just leave them with something. I want you to close it out. And then at the very end, let them know how they could get a hold of you. I want you to plug your book, let them know how they could get the book and all that stuff. So leave them with the closing message for Cory Mosley. And then also, how could they get in touch with you if they want to, hire you for a coach, if they want to read your book, go to one of your workshops, etc.
Yeah. So a couple things. Number one, my personal mantra is keep the mind sharp, the vision clear, and the resolve strong, and you will make it. So those are always my parting words. It's something I look at every day. It's something that's in our office. It's in my studio, and that's the belief system. As far as contacting me, I'm fairly easy to get to. CoryMosley.com is kind of our mainstay. Entrepreneurship Confidential is the book. So you can get to the book from CoryMosley.com if you want more information. If you want more information about that, EntrepreneurshipConfidential.com. You can hit CoryMosley.com and get everywhere you need to go from there. And listen, I wish everybody, number one, bravo to everyone who's taken the time to listen to this. Not because I'm so great or because Sean's so great, but because you value the idea of information and education. So I want to value you, and I want to applaud that, number one. And if you're listening to this all the way at the end, I want to double applaud you. And our goal was to serve. My goal was to serve. And of all the things that we can get back in our lives, we can get back our time. So I always want to say appreciation and thank everyone for giving me their time to hear a few words that I had to say, with the hopes that I have reached or impacted someone today.
Thank you, Cory, so much. I could definitely speak for everybody that's listening. We appreciate your expertise and your time. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. Anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you like it, you love it, you want more of it, then don't wait for the next money show. Just go to BradleyOnDemand.com and take your career to the next level. This conference is happening November 11th through the 13th. So go visit the website now, InternetSales20Group.com, or call 866-TEXAS-CAR. That's 866-839-2722.